Today, we are going to pull back the curtain on some of the most terrifying villains you've ever seen in the movies and uncover the chilling and very real story that inspired them. So you've got Norman Bates, Leatherface, Buffalo Bill. I mean, these guys are horror royalty, right? But what's absolutely wild is that all three of these iconic monsters, they all came from the same place. They were all inspired by the actions of one man, a quiet, seemingly harmless guy from rural Plainfield, Wisconsin. His name was Ed Gein. So how does one guy inspire that much terror? Well, to figure that out, we need to go back in time. Picture this. It's a cold November night, 1957. Cops in a small town are looking for a missing person, and they stumble onto something so grotesque, it didn't just haunt them for the rest of their lives. It basically burned itself into the DNA of American horror forever. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1, a museum of psychosis. The whole thing kicked off when a hardware store owner, a woman named Bernice Worden, just vanished. And the police? They had exactly one lead to go on. And what was that lead? A single sales receipt. The last one written in her store was for a gallon of antifreeze, sold to a guy named Ed Gein. So her son, who happened to be a deputy sheriff, followed that one tiny clue out to Ed's farm. It was this isolated, rundown place. He was hoping to find a witness, maybe. What he found instead was, well, the epicenter of a complete nightmare. The first thing they found was in a little shed on the property, and it was Bernice Worden's body. She was decapitated and hanging by her ankles. But believe it or not, that unbelievable, horrifying sight, that was just the beginning. The real horrors were waiting inside the house. So the officers go inside this cluttered, filthy house. And right away, their brains just couldn't compute what they were seeing. Think about this. The lampshades in the room, they weren't made of paper or fabric. They were made from human faces. Then they get to the kitchen table. You expect to see plates, maybe some food, but instead, there were bowls. And these weren't ceramic bowls. They were the tops of human skulls, sawed in half and polished. And it just kept going, room after room. The chairs, they were upholstered in human skin. Not leather, not fabric, human skin. As they went deeper into the house, it somehow got worse, more personal. In the bedroom, they found a corset. It was made from a woman's torso. I mean, it's just unimaginable. And then, probably the most horrifying thing in that whole house, a full bodysuit, made of human skin. Gein later admitted he would put it on at night and just walk around his farm. It was his twisted way of trying to become a woman. You see, this wasn't just a crime scene. It was a gallery of pure madness. The district attorney's report really said it all. They called it a museum of psychosis. I mean, even the people who see the worst of humanity, the seasoned cops, they had no words for this. So how does someone get to that point? A monster like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. To really get a handle on the why behind all this, we have to look at the one person who was his entire world. Right, Section 2, his mother, his world. So Ed's whole universe was his mom, Augusta. She was intensely religious, and I mean intensely. She basically locked him and his brother away on their farm, just hammering it into their heads that the rest of the world was sinful and corrupt. And her lessons were relentless. She told Ed over and over that all women besides her, were vessels of sin, tools of the devil. The only pure relationship a man could have, she said, was with his mother. That was it. And then his world just fell apart. In this incredibly short period, everything collapsed. 1940, his father dies. 1944, his brother dies. And then, in 1945, his mother, gone. And just like that, Ed Gein was completely, utterly alone on that farm. He couldn't handle it. The grief was so overwhelming that he literally tried to stop time. He went and sealed off his mother's rooms, just boarded them up. He left everything inside exactly as it was when she died. It became this perfect, untouched shrine. Okay, Section 3, from graves to murder. Now he's all alone, a total recluse, and that grief, that obsession, it started to curdle. It turned into something much, much darker. He became convinced he needed to bring his mother back. So at night, he starts this new education. He's reading medical textbooks, anatomy journals, even researching Nazi experiments. And pretty soon, all that reading wasn't enough. He started taking field trips, nightly trips to the local cemetery to get his materials. He later admitted to robbing at least 9 different graves. He'd wait for a woman to be buried who reminded him of his mother, and then he'd go out and dig her up, taking parts home for his projects. And for a while, just robbing graves was enough. It was passive, right? He was just taking from the dead. But then, things changed. He developed what he called a craving. It wasn't enough to just take from the dead anymore. He felt the need to create them. And that's when he escalated to murder. His first victim was Mary Hogan, who owned a tavern back in '54. And then, a few years later, Bernice Worden. And as we know, that was the murder that finally brought the whole house of horrors crashing down. All right, our final section, the Ghoul of Plainfield. Because once he was arrested, the terror in the town ended, but the legend, that was just getting started. This is how he became a real-life boogeyman. So, what happened to him? Well, you might be surprised to hear he never went to prison, not for a single day. At first, they said he was unfit for trial, so he went to a psychiatric institution. For 10 years, he was actually considered a model patient. Can you believe that? Then, in 1968, they finally put him on trial. He was found guilty, but then immediately declared legally insane. So he went right back to the institution, and that's where he stayed until he died in 1984. After he was locked away, the actual physical traces of his life just started to disappear. That farmhouse, his museum of psychosis, it was about to be sold probably as some morbid tourist trap. But then, one night, it just burned to the ground. Nobody ever figured out exactly how it happened. And it wasn't just the house, even his grave. People kept chipping pieces off the headstone for souvenirs until one day the whole thing was stolen. So now he's out there in an unmarked grave. It's like the land itself was trying to erase him. But here's the thing. Even though the farmhouse is gone and the grave is unmarked, his story is more powerful than ever. It really makes you think, doesn't it? Which is more terrifying, the monster you see on a movie screen or the quiet, seemingly normal guy living right next door?
True Files Archive.